celebrating being highly creative in a less creative world. I'm Joanna Peters, coach and mentor to professional creatives and creative professionals. And I talk to other creatives, innovators and thinkers about how we create, face down our critics, stay on track, get noticed and paid, and do the work we want to do. And I'm sharing the progress of my own book, all about creative people and how we thrive. Hello and welcome. It's the week of the 20th of August and it's high summer in Europe. I've been in the south of France for a couple of weeks in Provence. It's an area I haven't really known before, but it's always attracted a lot of artists and painters. The light is wonderful. It really brings colours to life. And there's fantastic shapes, buildings, rocky outcrops, amazing coastline and scenery. So I haven't been doing a lot of formal work, a lot of thinking, and it's great to have some space just to have ideas, to muse about things as I'm going about my daily life. I hope you're having a wonderful summer, and here's some very inspiring listening for you. Hello! Today my guest is Monica Michelle. Monica has an extraordinary range of creative achievements. She's a children's book writer and illustrator and the host of two podcasts, Invisible Not Broken, an irreverent podcast about living with chronic illness, and one for history for children that covers topics like lion tamers and carousels. But she started those only after illness forced her to give up a very successful photography business. And of course, photography is hugely competitive. But Monica had built up a six-figure business focusing particularly on women and children. But before that, she'd also been a jeweller and she trained as a ballet dancer, again having to give that up for health reasons. Monica, welcome to the Creative Life Show.
You know, I think everyone should get to listen to something like that defines their life so beautifully. I'm like, wow, I sound really interesting.
Well, I have amazing guests on. I don't often have people have such a range of sort of obvious creative activities. But what does it mean to you at this point in time to lead a creative life?
It's life-saving. It's definitely therapy money saving. There's been no time in my life where I haven't been saved by creativity, either others through reading or through storytelling, which is kind of the lens I view all of my creativity around, is just how can I tell a better story? When I was a dancer, I was telling stories through movement. When I was a photographer, it was a very different experience because I was seeing the story of a family or of a woman coming to terms with her body, or in boudoir photography, there was just stories abound. But I was taking their stories and giving it back to them in a way that they could process it and look at their families or their own bodies in a way that they saw it in the way that I could see it, which was unbelievably thrilling and fulfilling. So storytelling has just kind of been the thread.
Fantastic. So you've already touched on that area of creative challenge and this period of having to give up your business. And I think that's the story you're going to talk us through, isn't it, in more detail. So tell us about what happened.
So I've been sick since I was a little girl, but I was misdiagnosed. And so we thought that I had something that was a lot more manageable. And I just kept going with it, even though my body was starting to give out more and more. And I was shooting weddings at the time, and I would have to take up to 6 Vicodin just to get through a wedding. And my husband was like, this is insane and ridiculous. My husband, who, by the way, helped me start my business. I was a single mom, and he helped fund my business when we were friends. So he saw me through the entire process. And my body just kept giving out. So I kept adjusting my business to fit my body, and I stopped doing weddings. And then I was just photographing families, and then I stopped really advertising to families, and I started focusing more on boudoir and newborns. And then my wrist started to go, and I switched my camera gear out to a lighter camera. So I just kept making like one adjustment after another. And
did you know what was happening with your body?
We didn't know. And it was terrifying. I have to tell you, like, I watched so much like Dr. House and ER and Grey's Anatomy, just hoping that there would be a person on the show that would show similar symptoms to what I was dealing with. I was desperate for an answer, and I wasn't following I was told I had fibromyalgia, which I do have, but I wasn't following that trajectory. This was so much more catastrophic. And I didn't have an answer, and I was terrified. I was starting to fall downstairs. I would forget people's names. I would forget where I was walking home from like dropping my daughter off. Things were just out of control and terrifying. And we just had to make really big business decisions. And the biggest was when I finally got my diagnosis and I started to have to walk with a cane. I was terrified I would lose all my clients. I was so scared that this business I built up would be gone because no one would want a photographer with a cane. I mean, that's an intensely physical job. And I've talked to you about the kindness of people that I've met. And one of my clients who I didn't know very well, I had the worst pain day I'd had so far. I couldn't even stand. And I just started to cry, which I don't do often. And I just told her how scared I was and how frustrated I was with this body that is not working. And she just said, "Do you know what I do for a living?" I said, "No, I have no idea." She said, "Well, I counsel people who are disabled. And I would love to talk to you." And she, in the most beautiful way, told me to trust my clients, my friendships I'd built through the business, and to keep changing my business to fit me. And that's what I did for the next 2 years. And that woman is just one of those, like, the right person comes into your life and says the right thing at the right time. And you're just like, oh my gosh, how generous is the universe right now? That's incredibly kind.
So what was the diagnosis that you received?
So I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, type 3+, and that is a no collagen. Ligaments do not hold your body together. So you have, at the best, you have hypermobility with some dislocations once in a while. You're easier to dislocate, to very extreme, can't get out of bed. I'm closer to the can't get out of bed at this point. I've pointed at something and dislocated my wrist. I've turned around and popped my tibia out completely. I swear to you, the ERs love me because they've never seen half the dislocations I show up with. So it's I'm a great teaching tool is what that comes down to.
And this was building up and getting worse while you were trying to run your photography business, which is very physical, isn't it? It's kit.
It's intense. And it's a lot of, for me, I was a very physical photographer because I was always searching for the shot. So there was no chance I wasn't going to climb a tree if it meant that I could get my shot. Like, I shot ad campaigns where I'd be lying on the ground photographing basketball stars and then have to like jump up onto like on the hood of a car to get the next shot. And it was very physical. And one of the most fulfilling things that I did was very selective event photography. So I photographed for TEDx. And my favorite thing that I ever photographed for was the 3% conference, which is the idea that advertising at that time, only 3% of the advertising directors were women. And my friend who is an advertising director had a glass of wine with me. I was like, I want to do something about that. I'm going to quit and start a conference. So I photographed that conference through the first 3 years to this point where it's become this massive big deal. And the last time I shot for her was, I think, 3 years ago, and I had to shoot from a wheelchair, and I explained it to her. She hired a second photographer to help me. But it was one of the most proud moments of like my little moments where she was standing up on stage and thanked me for being a part of the beginning to this point. And to be able to shoot that last event from the wheelchair was really special, but it was not something I recovered well from. It took 6 months to recover from that.
And I'm hearing that your photography business was fulfilling on lots of different levels. I'm hearing that sort of connection and purpose are so important.
It really was. And it was also a way to, I'm so passionate about women and their accepting of their bodies. If you think about the beauty industry being around $6 billion a year, and you think for just a second, if we just decided, you know what, I'm okay, I'm good enough, it's good, we're good. It's a body that functions. I will do what I need to do to feel happy about it. But what could women do if we took $6 billion a year and all of that mental focus that women have put on dieting or, things that don't make them happy? I'm all for if you want to like put on your face and that makes you happy and that's arts and crafts for you, but just doing the stuff that we don't want to do. It'd be amazing what could happen if we turned that around. And that's something I was really passionate about that I got to work on with boudoir photography and working at the 3% conference.
So was it clear when you got your diagnosis that photography was not going to be sustainable for you?
Yes. One of the first conversations I had was, there's no way you can keep that camera. And it was my baby. Like other photographers will tell you, like, you might have a few cameras in your kit, but there's your baby that your soul, your hand, like, every little trick that you could do to make that shot. And my baby weighed about 3 pounds, 5 to 8 pounds with lenses, and up to 10 pounds with extra battery stuff. And I was ripping apart my ligaments in my arms holding that that beast. So that was definitely going to be one of the first things. And then it was, you can't do weddings. And then it was, you really safely cannot hold those babies. That's not safe. I was like, oh, I won't do that again. And it's just giving up one thing at a time until it just was not going to be physically possible anymore at all. And it was so kind at the very end of it. Like, I would have my clients would put away all my props and would move my furniture for me and would help me shut up the studio at the end of the day when I couldn't stand. And the store owner next to me would come over at the end of her day and help me clean up. Like, I cannot stress how kind people have been through these transitions.
And did you know from that point that you needed to find something new? Or was the emotion more about, was it something you could accept?
That is the hardest word for me to deal with, because it sounds like it's such a positive thing to accept something, to move forward. And to me, at that point, it felt like giving up. And I won't lie to you, I had a dark 6 months. I'm not good at being depressed. I don't have the attention span to be depressed. I am such a, like, the dog and Up, like, squirrel. I'm sad, squirrel. Like, I don't have the attention span to stay sad or mad at anything for long. And I sure found some reserves that first 6 months after I closed up shop. I had a hard time, and I was stuck in bed a lot of that time alone. And I sat with my mom one day, and she's been one of my biggest supporters through my whole life. That woman has saved me through so much. And she was like, okay, you just got to think about, what can you do now? And what is still possible for you? And I sat down and wrote a list on what I could do, even at the worst, even from bed. And I was so lucky that I had a great aunt who was very close to me, who went blind, and she had been super independent her whole life and had to go into a home. And each challenge she met with, okay, well, this is different. This is different. Okay. I'll just find out what's new. And without her example in front of me, my Auntie B, and I have a tattoo of her on my forearm. It says purpose and possibility with her initials under it. Without that idea of purpose and possibility every day, and my aunt's example, I'm not sure I would have had the strength to really think about what I could still do. I've always loved art. I always loved to draw. I could no longer paint. I used to paint big oils, and I couldn't hold the canvas anymore. So I taught myself digital art on the iPad. So I spent 6 months on YouTube classes, just learning how to illustrate for children's books, because I write. I always have. And my mom and I talked a lot about what was interesting to me. And one of the things that was very interesting to me was history. And I love the idea of bringing history to kids in a way that was unexpected. I don't care about wars. I really don't. They depress me. I don't want to know about, like, I know it's awful to say we need to know our history. It's really important. But to get someone like really excited about it, I was like, what about lion tamers? Come on, that's really cool. Like, the history of lion tamers. That's awesome. I want to know about that. So I started a podcast, and I started writing these little history books for kids about, like, the history of royal dogs.
So did that come directly out of that list you made with your mum? So just going back.
That list, it was absolutely right. Number one on the list was that. And then the second thing on the list was what ended up being the thing that took off and took over my life, which I was not expecting it to be a big deal. It was, one of my guests on my podcast said, I am an extrovert. I live in an introvert's body. And that was the ultimate yes for me, because I am an extrovert. I love to meet people. I come alive talking to people. It is my recharge, is exchanging ideas and being stuck in one room. Thank God for the internet and Skype, because that allowed me to open up my world and start talking to more people. So I started the Invisible Not Broken, which was just, my mom was sitting on the patio in front of my bedroom. And I was like, what about interviewing people who have chronic illnesses like me? What about, like, trying to teach people to be more gentle and kind and take a beat before asking someone why they're walking out of their car when they have a disabled license on it? Like, it just was an idea to start educating people on all the insane, crazy disorders and illnesses in the world, and talking to people about how they make their lives better. How can people in the real world make things easier for someone who has a wheelchair?
So you came up with the idea talking to your mum, and I know that you say you went in a week from idea to launch. Is that right?
Yes, that is so right. And this is what my son calls my relentless optimism. I had no idea how to do a podcast. I really honestly still don't. To be completely fair, we have a listenership that is honoring and baffling to me. And I'm so grateful for everyone who listens to Invisible Not Broken. But I don't know what I'm doing, to be honest. When on YouTube, I got the basics down so that I could put it up for the world. But I'm a big fan of never letting perfect get in the way of good, get in the way of done.
This is what strikes me when I look at what you've done. You've changed direction. I hadn't even realized that you changed your focus of your photography business several times as you needed to do that. You seem to be somebody who goes, right, I'm going to do it, and gets on and does it.
So I have a best friend I grew up with. She's taking her bar this weekend, so good luck, Catherine. But she is my rock and my center, and I have a lot of what would Catherine do moments because she is the rock, steady, solid person who knows what's going to go wrong, which is why she's taking the bar. And she and I have a role with each other, and we've seen each other through divorces. We've seen each other through my illness. I've seen her through her father's illness. We've been there for each other, and we never let each other whine for more than a day. Like you get like 1 day for the big stuff, you get 1 hour for the little stuff, and that's it. You can throw your temper tantrum. I'll listen to it. But at the end of it, she's like, okay, so what are you going to do about it? Like, okay, that's good. That's what I needed, the kick in the tail. Got it.
Fantastic. And what did she say about your podcast? So when you ask yourself, what would Catherine say? What kind of answer comes back?
Oh, I can actually tell you what she did say. How are you going to get sued by this? That's been like, I'm the one who comes up with huge ideas all the time. Like when I was a photographer, I had this dream idea that I would open up a school. I wanted to open up a high school. I wrote out the business plan. I had everything all set on what kind of high school I wanted to start. And she's like, you're going to get sued for this, for that. Like, I love her. She drives me up a wall, but she is the person who will figure out where I'll fall on my face, which is a good thing to know before you fall. You can like shore those things up.
So when you're having these ideas and you're going for it, are you someone who does experience fear and doubt and ignore them, or they just don't figure in it?
I tell my kids my favorite lesson in life, which is take a look, see if you have a reason to be terrified. If there's a really good reason that you should be scared, then consider not doing it. But if the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to fall on your face, fall on your face. It's okay. If there is one incredible gift all of this has taught me, is that you can fall on your face over and over and over again. And that is okay, because you can take everything you learned before you fell, including why you fell, and you can bring it to your next project.
You said that you had this very dark 6 months. Was that just depression that hits? Or had you somehow almost forgotten something about yourself, which it took your mum and other people to remind you of?
All right, I'm going to pay you for therapy after this. That's how this is going to work. So I have had clinical depression before, and that's a very different experience than situational depression. So what I went through for the 6 months was situational. It was, this is bad. I am sad. And you're right. I forgot the sparkle. I like that thing that makes you feel invincible. It's almost like what people tell me drugs feel like. Like this is like where you feel powerful, like you can do anything. And I get that charge from other people, from sitting around exchanging ideas from other people, and usually people smarter than me. And I love that. It's a wonderful feeling of we can do this, we can change things. And I wasn't getting it anymore. And I felt like everything had shifted. When you're chronically ill, your marriage changes drastically. Your friendships change extremely. It is a low tide when it comes to friendships when you get very, very sick and you're stuck in bed. So you're right. There was a lot that I forgot about what makes me spark and how to get that even if I couldn't be out in the world.
And what was it that reminded you? You said your mother came and said, let's make a list.
My mom. Yeah, she is one of my favorite humans. And this was not like a Gilmore Girls story. We had some rough patches. We didn't speak for some years, but one of the things that I could say that would help anyone out in a relationship is that you have a decision to make, which is, are you going to stick it out through thick and thin? And can you trust this person enough to know they have your best interest at heart? And that was what my mom and I talked about was, she trusted me to have her best interest. I trusted her to have my best interest. And at that point, we were just going to hash it out. Even if we made each other cry, even if we had to yell, we are just going to trust that we would just keep going till we understood each other. And it took years, but we're really close now. And her and my husband, who's one of my favorite people on the face of the earth, they remind me a lot of who I am. I will tell you that my children are probably the best at that. Both of my kids are two very different humans who seem to have the absolute set mindset of, we are going to make sure that mom laughs today, or that she feels loved today. Like, my kids are amazing people. And my son is one of the funniest people I know. My daughter is one of the most imaginative people I know. And they're always reminding me what to be focusing on.
That's wonderful, because I was going to ask you, I'm sure with your condition, with what you've said, despite the fact you come across as very happy and positive, that you have days when you wake up and go, what's this about? And what you do in that situation.
You missed last night. There was quite a temper tantrum I had last night about being sick. One of the worst things for me is parenting as far as the parent I wanted to be. I wanted to be the mom who's like, hiking is the most important thing you can do. We're going to go out every weekend and hike. And I used to be super consistent when I was healthier. And now I'm like, I don't know, were you punished for something? Are you still grounded? What were you grounded for again? Like, my ability to be consistent is gone. It's awful. And I feel horrible. I wanted to be a different parent than I am. And that's probably the most frustrating. I will also say that my children are a lot more empathetic than I've heard other people talk about their teenagers or their preteens. They are incredibly capable. They can make dinners. They can do their own laundry. I mean, there's definite trade-offs on this, but the frustration is definitely there. And I don't want to give the impression that, I mean, I'm a cheerful person. I'm annoyingly happy. But I do also have some dark moments, and I think that's okay. I don't think you get to always be cheerful without seeing what you've given up. Like, it's okay to honor and mourn that. It's not a bad thing to go, wow, I really miss being there and doing that, because then that gives you a clue on what you're missing right now.
And then you can use that as a way of perhaps trying to find other ways to fulfill it, maybe?
Exactly.
And you're writing books, you're illustrating books. I couldn't see anything in your background about illustration and art. And yet here you are selling your art, working as a professional illustrator. Was this you again just going, I'm going to do it?
That's me being cheap. I had an idea for a children's book, and I was like, oh, this is so cute. I want to do this kid's book on the history of royal dogs. This is so fun. I mean, like, who knew that corgis were fairy dogs? That's awesome. And I went on to Fiverr because I'm like, I'll just find an illustrator. I'll just pay someone on Fiverr to illustrate. It doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be kind of cute. And I saw how much they charged. And I was like, that's fair. That's a lot of work, but I can't pay that. So I went back to the drawing board, literally, and I'm like, okay, well, if there is a skill, it obviously is teachable. Someone can learn it. No one's born with pencils in their hand. So if they could learn it, I can. And I just sat down with YouTube videos and failed a billion times. And I look back at that first book and I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have drawn it that way now. It's amazing. Like, if you draw every day for a year, how different your drawings are in like 6 months, a year. But like I said, perfect, never get in the way of getting done. And I just released it, and I just keep building the skills.
And is it something that you find yourself losing yourself in and getting the same kind of thrill from as you do from writing or you did from photography?
Yes. And that's what ended up really breaking my heart. So the podcast came after the children's books, and I had been drawing for 6 to 8 hours a day, because I don't know if any other kind of pain people out here want to weigh in on it. But when I was in the middle of the flow where you're just creative, I don't feel pain. I don't feel anything. I just am totally in that beautiful like moment, and it is amazing. And I got that from drawing, and it was my pain relief until it created more pain. And I started to dislocate my right wrist over and over and over again. And I couldn't draw every day. So now I only draw like once or twice a week. But that's how Invisible Not Broken got started, was because at that point where I couldn't keep drawing, I looked at my husband, I looked at my mom, and like, okay, so I can't do this every day anymore. What's next? And like, okay, well, let's go back to the list. It's like, oh, that's right. I was going to like start talking to people who have invisible and chronic illnesses. I will do that. I can do that even if my wrist is broken. So that was another pivotal point.
And that's really taking off, isn't it? You've been going for a while now.
It's almost a year. I am baffled. Like it was an idea I had in August last year. So 2017, I'm doing great with years. I'm in denial about this last year, by the way. But yeah, so it was a year ago, and I was amazed. It was one of these things where I've done a billion projects. At least 90% of them never took off. They were just something that I learned a lot from and I moved on. And I'm like, okay, well, that didn't go so great. Let's move on and bring those skills to the next thing. This was the first thing I have ever done that across the board, even people I barely had talked to, reached out. How do I help? What can I do? My co-host I got because I explained the idea to him. He was a friend. And he said, I will do literally anything you need done to make this happen. I need this in my life, so I will do anything. So it was like this crazy moment where it was something that I wanted to do that other people really wanted in the world.
And did you put it out there and just at that point just start telling people about it? Or did it happen more organically?
It was jump into the deep end and start paddling. I interviewed one of my dear friends who has amyloidosis. And we had this interview. I figured out I did not know how to edit. I still don't know how to edit. I just put it up on my Squarespace account and like read up on Squarespace, how do you like submit this to Apple Podcast? And then I just would ask random questions on Facebook of people like, okay, does anyone know how to take out squeaky noises? Does anyone know how to level out voices? And then people are like, what are you doing? And so I just say what I was doing. And then, oh my gosh, I need this. Or, oh my gosh, my best friend was just diagnosed with fill in the blank here. And the really lovely business side of this all is this is a very SEO friendly business to be doing because everyone who gets diagnosed with the disorder instantly goes onto podcast or onto Google and types it in. And I feel like this is a great service because instead of like, WebMD, which is like, you're going to die right now. They can actually listen to someone who's living with it, which is often a very different experience than what the doctors have told you things are like.
And very personal in a way that WebMD can never hope to be.
Right. And a lot snarkier, a lot funnier, a lot more sarcastic. And I don't take anything too terribly seriously. I try not to. And this at least gives people a minute to laugh about the absolute ridiculousness of being disabled. There is so much that is hilariously ridiculous. And there's some great stories.
What's your superpower that allows you to do this sort of unstoppable creativity, whichever you're focusing on?
My mom calls me, I can't remember the name of it, but it's one of those dolls that has the big bottom, which is not the reason why she thinks of me, but you flip at it and it flips down and flips right back up again. It won't stay down. And she's like, that's you. I have no idea if it is a superpower that I was just born like this, like my positive needle is like really high, or I've been sick my whole life. I've had to adjust my whole life. None of this is new to me. It's all very, very expected. So I feel so sorry for people who get disabled suddenly. That's got to be terrifying. I've been adjusting to this for 40 years. So I think I'm really good at paying attention to what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, and then finding a way to make it work for me, even if it's the worst case scenario, turning it around to being like the armor.
Monica, where can people connect with you?
So our website is invisiblenotbroken.com. And from there, you can find everything that I and my co-host are doing. I even have a little section on there that says things we do other than be sick. And under there, you can find my books and my illustrations. But the podcast is definitely there. And even if you're not chronically ill and you're hearing all this discussion on like the opioid crisis, I don't know if you guys are having the full-blown meltdown that we're having here. it might be a good idea just to take a listen and just kind of hear what the other side of it, the people who actually are in chronic pain are saying, or we just have discussed a lot on medical marijuana because of the incredible help that CBD has shown in seizure disorders. So it's, even if you're not sick, it might be a good idea just to go there and kind of like listen to the real life experiences with these things.
Well, we live in a society where plenty of our friends and family and community members are sick, aren't they? So
isn't it just baffling? Like, I don't remember my mom's friends being as sick as I and my friends are. Like, what happened?
Yeah, I suppose we noticed more. And there's also great podcast episodes on royal dogs and lion tamers.
And that's on there too. It's a little section on the website that says, I can't believe that happened. And it's in a little bit of a hiatus because I'm changing formats just a little bit, where I'm going to be writing a book per season. So we're going to focus on one topic. So the first topic is going to be the history of circuses. And I am about a week away from being finished with the book. So it'll be back on in probably about September. I'll have it back up and running with the book.
And that's a kids podcast particularly. But I've listened to some and they're fun.
It is, but I have so many grown-ups who listen to it. There are so many adults who will message me during the day going, okay, I just found it. We're in love.
I've bookmarked it for a long trip we're driving across Europe this summer for my son.
Let me know how you like it. And I am so jealous about that road trip.
So I'm going to put out all those links at creativelifeshow.com. So you can find all those. If you're not in a place, you can go and connect immediately. Monica, thank you so much for coming on and bringing your positivity and energy and sharing a bit of what it's like to be creative, even when your body isn't cooperating.
Boy, this has just been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. And I love Invisible Not Broken's philosophy of being kinder and being more empathetic. So have a week which is full of kindness, empathy and creativity. And I'll see you back here next week.